Hello, everyone, and welcome to LTB Farms. I'm Lanny Brothers, and hopefully you've seen our farming videos, but if not, we're glad to have you along for this video here. Now, last time on our Beginning Sheep Farmer series, we did a section on lambing kits and having your lambing kit prepared and ready for your first lambing season and kind of some helpful suggestions there. So if you haven't checked that video out, I'll put a little link up here where you can click on that and you can go check that out as well. So with these beginning sheep farmer videos, what I'm doing is we're kind of going through no particular order of importance. It's basically just in kind of what seems to be what we answer the most questions about. So the lambing kits, lambing preparedness was one of the biggest things we get questioned about a lot. The next one is going to be shelter. Okay, that's what we're going to talk about today is shelter for your sheep. What do I need to have? What are some things I need to consider? And we're going to talk about that today. So if you go to Google and you type in sheep barn, sheep shelter, sheep shed, not she shed, you type that in, you're going to get a wide variety of things that could look anything like this to this. And now, I mean, both of these could work depending on what your goals are, the climate in your area, and of course your budget. But let's be honest, when you're just starting out, it's easy to feel kind of lost in the options. So what I want to do is I want to kind of help you figure out what's really essential, what you really need to think about when it comes to housing your sheep. You're going to need about, well, textbook says 20 square feet for each adult sheep indoor space. Okay, that might be pushing a little bit, but if you're going to have lambs, that's not that big a deal. That's not that bad at all. Okay, because crowded sheep are very unhappy sheep, so keep that in mind. So now that you kind of have an idea of your space, all right, of how many feet you need for the sheep, there's other things to consider, and we'll get into that in just a moment. So you need to pick your spot wisely. Okay, higher ground is definitely your friend. Trust me on this one because you really don't want to be dealing with muddy, wet bedding, poor drainage, especially in heavy rains when it's cold and wet and nasty. And while you're at it, you also want to think about orientation and orientation, not just so much just because of your sunlight, catching as much winter sun as possible, but also where your prevailing winds come from. If your winds prevail out of the south, southwest in the summertime and north, northeast in the wintertime, like it does here, that gives you kind of an idea on how to position that shelter so that you have best sunlight access and you also have the best blocking of wind from your prevailing wind directions, especially in the wintertime. That's going to be your biggest concern, so keep that in mind. So let's talk about essentials. Your sheep don't have to have a palace, but they do need something that keeps the rain off their backs, the wind out of their ears, and the predators away. Those are the three main things. So a solid roof and walls are an absolute must. Use what you have. I mean, if you have leftover 2x4s or you have pallet wood, yeah, people knock on pallets a lot, but you know what? When you can nail those together and put a piece of plywood on the outside and they make a nice, decent, sturdy, solid wall, don't count off on that. Okay, so use what you have to make the best of your shelter and make it as solid as you can get. You need to consider, in the wintertime, if you live in a place where, snow can get 4 foot deep, you need to make sure that your roof is good and solid to handle the weight of that snow. If you live in a place where there's a lot of driving winds and hail and rain in the summertime, that your walls are good and solid to be able to handle that. So keep that in mind as you're planning your shelter, okay? So a solid roof, solid walls, ventilation is very important as well. It's more important really than you think. Stale air can cause a lot of respiratory problems. So you want windows, preferably windows that are under overhangs so that rain can't blow in, but there's roof overhangs, windows up under here. So it just provides that extra, ventilation flow. So keep that in mind. Predator proofing is going to be one of the biggest things because just about everything in the world likes to eat lamb. Coyotes, stray dogs, you name it, they'll take any chance they get to be able to get to your sheep. So think strong fences, small openings, and electric nets, electric fences, gates on your shelter so that you can bring them in at night. Because around here, there's some nights that the predators are absolutely unbelievable, thick, hundreds of them, it sounds like. It's nice to kind of bring them into an area, close the gate, and you know that they're protected. So keep that in mind as well. Build your shelter also with cleaning up the shelter in mind, because you're not going to be able just to put the sheep in there and them stay in there forever and not ever have to do anything about cleaning out or removing waste. Okay, it's just going to be one of those things. So keep that in mind as you're setting up your shelter. What kind of flooring do I want? Do I want dirt floor? Do I want concrete floor? There's positives and negatives to each one of those. So those are things that you need to consider as well. And trust me, you'll save yourself a lot of time if you think about how I'm going to clean this shelter out before you really put the first post in the ground. Okay, so think of that. And you don't have to break the bank. You know, it really is not that expensive to build a good shelter. Like I said, get creative. Old shipping containers, bring those in, cut windows in them, put a little lean-to shed on the front so they can kind of come out in and out and have access out front. Old barn wood pallets, anything like that can work absolutely wonderful. So when you're thinking about your shelter, you also need to think ahead a little bit, okay? So what if you start raising sheep and you decide, I really like this. So now you have this shed that can handle 10 or 15 sheep, and now you're looking at maybe wanting to do 30 or 35. And we dealt with this when we were transitioning from goats to sheep. We had started off with only about 10 or 15 goats. And then next thing we knew, we had 60 goats, and then we had 80 goats. And every time we would have to step up, we would have to take our corral, our working system, where we run them through and trim feed and, things like that. We had to expand it and change it and alter it to make it handle the numbers that we had. Well, when we decided to go to sheep, we were still dealing with those goat numbers. So we went from, 15, 20 goats, 30 to 60 to 80 to 100 and 125, I think, at the max. And we had just really torn all the corral down and rebuilt the whole thing and made it work for that. Well, working sheep and working goats are very different. Some similarities, but very different as far as your space and your flow and all that good stuff. I won't bore you with that right now. But we had just really finished that. And then we had to turn around and revamp it all over again. Where if we had considered the possibility for future expansion, future changes, we could have built those in the beginning so that it would not be such a ordeal of having to tear everything down, because we made everything pretty permanent at first, so you wouldn't have to tear everything down and start all over. And it can be very frustrating. You need to do it, but it seems like a daunting task. Okay, so keep in mind the possibility of future expansion for your herd. All right, so if you do that, if you think about modular designs where, if I knock down this wall and I can set the post on the other side and basically build this right next to this one connected, take that plywood out, boom, and they're connected. I mean, there's ways to think about kind of a modular design. I really want to recommend build in space when you talk about space for your shelter. Build in space where during inclement weather, when it's really rainy, wet, nasty, cold, that you can have feeders indoors. Okay. I don't necessarily agree with if a sheep has outdoor access, feeding them indoors, because the outdoor access, the outside feeding just makes it easier for them to all get around the trough. They have plenty of room to move. And indoors, I don't care how big the facility is, it just has that feel of being indoors, and they just seem to fight more and struggle more to get into the troughs. Okay, so keep that in mind, that you want to have room where if it's going to be raining tonight or whatever, then you can take that trough and you can move it indoors, and you can feed in there, but it won't make any real hardships on space. Okay, that was kind of a long way of saying that. It's late at night, and I'm trying to bring this video to a close for you. So I hope you understand kind of the gist of where I'm going with that. And make sure that you consider gated access on your barn, okay, whatever that may be, whether it's a traditional type barn, but maybe just a small barn like the small homes, a small barn or pallet shed or a rectangle, wood rectangle with a metal roof or a shingle roof, whatever you want. Have a gated access, okay, whether it's a 4 foot, 6 foot, 12 foot, whatever it may be. Have a gated access so that you can gate off in those nights that predators are really bad. You have a place to bring them in and close them in for the night. It also provides a place where if you need to trim feet or check for worms or whatever you may need to do, health checks, whatever it may be, that you can bring them in and close that gate, close them off, and have them kind of in a closed space. It just makes it so much easier than having to try to chase them over 10 acres or even an acre, because it's amazing how agile they can be. Trust me on that. I hope something about this video helped you a little bit consider what you need to consider as you're getting ready to get into your first flock of sheep and build your first sheep housing. Okay. I hope some of this was helpful. I hope you can take away little bits that you can build into that and just make the process easier for you. If you have stories of how maybe some of your sheep shelter stories went, be sure to leave them in the comments. Sheep, goat, cows, whatever it may be. Leave them in the comments. We would be glad to hear your stories as well. If you have any other questions about this, leave that in the comments also. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel at LTB Farms, like the video, and give us a thumbs up. All right. So thank you all very much, and I hope you've enjoyed watching. Have a great day.